Good evening, everyone. This is Ron.
Good evening.
So, guys, bear with us, okay? Uh, as always, we'll start and see if we have any questions with me. If I can just kind of recap a little bit here. Uh, on yesterday, we started off with questions as usual. We talked a little bit about the harmony within yourself, and we'll get back to that in just a second, I hope. Uh, but we talked a lot about uh, a article that pastor had sent the teachers, and we talked about this Stargate. It's the same article we talked about last year this time, but we talked about the energy and what the availability of it, and the we looked at the numerology of it because some of the numbers were pretty significant, like the number 88, and we concluded that adding the numbers up came to the number 9. So we brought that in, and George opened that up and explained it to us what 9 represents. Um, we went into that. Looking at 8 as the number of infinity, and backwards because the solar plex is a big part of that article, and we talked about the location being one of the energy fields, and there are a number of energy fields out there we can think of. I think it is 7 that we usually look at in the body that are pretty popular. That we talked about some of those, uh, but it led us again back to looking at energy that we are, and we had another large discussion again on how and what it means to have harmony within self, and that's led us to look at meditation. What meditation is? It is and not the reciting of words and the way we've been taught, and looking at your how to energy forces, how to dominate Earth, being aware of who you are at all times, looking at being always in focus and looking at forgiveness. Uh, we talked about the spiritual space that we are, the body represent being in that space and not the spirit in the body. So we talked about several things here. Uh, when we opened up the energy part of it, and we talked about dominating the mind, our material thoughts, and not letting the body um, dominate your spirit, not letting those material thoughts dominate us. So I don't have all the details of it, but that's kind of highlight of what we got into yesterday. So if anybody think of anything else that was more significant or significant to you, please feel free to add it for me, please.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This goes back to Saturday's lesson. I wasn't present on Sunday's lesson. I asked Reverend Richard because we were talking about humming, and I asked him how does whistling um, have an impact with humming. And if I heard you correctly, Reverend Richard, you stated that whistling has more to do with the material world. And I hope I heard that correctly. That's the part that I don't understand. Because when I look at whistling as a young man growing up, when I could learn how to whistle or just make that noise, I felt that I was doing something that a man could. And there were plenty of men that they were good whistlers. Um, Yet that's the part that I don't really understand. That whistling is mostly associated with the material world. Um, that's it right there.
Okay. Um, I didn't want to delve deeply into that. However, I will. Whistling is something that grew out of slavery. Um, Whistling was a way of sending messages to other enslaved people, and they were a warning, or depending on what the tune was that was being whistled. And after slavery, of course, it continued, and it became an intricate part of music in the African communities. When I grew up, I also remember older men whistling, and they could whistle any song that they heard. But it was a more of a message than it was attuned to the rhythm of the universe. I do not doubt for a moment that they were not in tune with the rhythm of the universe. However, the reason I said material is because of how it was used during enslavement. Does that help you, George?
Uh, yes and no, Reverend Richard. I'll get it, but I just may not get it at this very moment. I can see whistling being some form of a communicative to slavery, and I can also see whistling as a communicative to at this very moment. But nonetheless, though, I could always get back in contact with you to help fill in the blanks for me. But nonetheless, though, thank you very much.
All right, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions or comments? Any questions on what we discussed on yesterday? Any? Is that clear to you, everyone? Okay. Um, if I can, if you guys allow me to, I want a couple of days ago, uh, someone mentioned, someone asked a question. It may have been last week about witches and witchcraft, and I went back and looked at something that I thought was kind of interesting. And it may not be in line with what we talked about, but I still think it's interesting enough to show it to you. If you will, please look at 1 Samuel chapter 15. And this just an observation. It won't hopefully take too long, but I'm trying to think of where to start here. I'm not at the first verse. Uh, there, 1 Samuel to me is a fascinating book. A lot of stuff in here. If you're not careful, you read it and it sounds like a nice little pretty story, but it's so many messages in here that are very significant. I'm really interested in verse 23, and I'm going to start at verse 20, and then I'll kind of hopefully bring you up to speed as to where we are, okay? Verse 20 says, Then Saul said to Samuel, I'm in 1 Samuel chapter 15, I'm starting at verse 20, okay? Then Saul said to Samuel, I did obey the voice of the Lord, and went on the mission on which the Lord sent me, and have brought back Agag, the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroy the Amalekites. But the people took some of the spoiled sheep and oxen and the choices of things devoted to the destruction to sacrifice to the Lord your God at Gilgal. And Samuel said, has the Lord as much delight in burnt offering and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of divination, and subordination is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. Now, what did this start off talking about? Samuel king, and if you notice here, the one of the things that you notice about Saul is Saul did not have a lot of confidence. The first thing he says when Samuel tries to anoint him king is, I'm from the smallest tribe and I'm from the smallest family that is it from the smallest. Why? In other words, why me? What am I doing here? So when he goes and he calls all of Israel together and he's going to anoint him in front of everybody, Saul hides from him. So he was very reluctant to take this role, but when he does take the role, in its own way. And so when God told Samuel to tell him to go out to slay these people who have fought against Israel, and to not spare men, women, children, anybody, not even the animals, to slaughter all of them. But Saul does not do that. He does not do that. He takes matters into his own hands, and he not only saves some of the animals, as he says, for sacrifices, but he also saves the king himself. So the other part of this that I haven't mentioned is very important. When he anointed him, he said to him, I want you to, for 7 days, I want you to wait for me for 7 days, and I'll come and offer a sacrifice before you go to war. So so Saul becomes very impatient. He becomes very impatient because that the 7 days are passing, and Samuel has not offers his own sacrifice. Now, it not look like a bad thing, but let's connect it to what he says here in verse 23. He says, "For rebellion is the same is as the sin of divination." In other words, witchcraft. It is the same, and that's the part that kind of got my attention. Rebellion be the same, and as one writer says, he says in the I forgot the publication. He says it should not say as, which it says it should say it is witchcraft. It is divination. So what is being said here? When you look at the actions of Saul, and if you go back and look at this and look at it from chapter 10 on up through 15 and beyond, if you care to, what you see is Saul accepts this appointment. He accepts it. He's anointed with oil, and he accepts it. He knows fully what he's getting into, but he's not fully committed. He does things in his own way, and the reason that he ends up on or doing his own sacrifice is because Samuel was not a God. God was his heart. In other words, the things that he was doing for Saul and not for God. So when Eli, I mean, I keep calling him Eli, when Samuel is a little late getting there, that is not saying just as a story that this man is late, the man of God is late getting there. That is saying the lateness is the tardiness of you recognizing who you are, the tardiness of you recognizing who God is in your life. So his impatience is led to his rebellion. And if you look at this, rebellion is rebellion, but to liken it to witchcraft, to me, is what got my attention. So I look at it from our perspective. When you can look at religious people, you can look at even pastors and priests, but if they are religious and don't have a real understanding of who God is, that is different than what Saul is doing. So what I'm saying is, he who has asked to be placed, has inquired internally as we have, and to see self, to see who you are, to be in touch with your soul, to be driven by your soul. That's who this is talking to. So you being that person who has been anointed, who steps in for the people, how fully committed are you? Because not being fully committed is as rebellion. And as he's saying here, if your insubordination just totally not to do. You heard the voice of God. You know what is supposed to be done, but this is idolatry. And I just thought those things kind of stood out to me when I looked at this, trying to get a better understanding of what witchcraft is. These verses kind of stood out to me. So, questions or comments? I feel like I'm forgetting something, but questions or comments about it? Does it make sense?
I hope this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Reverend Richard.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Reverend Richard. From what little I know about the witch doctor that comes out of Vadum, and voodoo comes out of Vadum. And when I was reading on Shaka Zulu, when that tribe went up against the Europeans in battle, the witch doctor prescribed to the warriors that after battle was done, just didn't come back into that compound or colony, had to deprogram yourself, because the witch doctor stated war is not good. So in my interpretation, witch doctor, in some cases the witch doctors were female, some cases it was male. They had a great deal of knowledge, a great deal of wisdom. That's all I had to say that as it relates to
okay. And I appreciate that, because you made me remember the part I forget that I was forgetting, because I anything that you do, anything that we are engaged in, one of the reasons that stood out to me is what Samuel represents is that meditation. Samuel represents that internal part of you that you should be becoming more and more comfortable with. So it doesn't matter how large or how small. It doesn't matter anything. A war is anything that is against righteousness. Anything that comes up in your day that is against righteousness, against what you stand for, against the harmony that we're trying to bring to the universe. So the waiting for Samuel is talking about his meditation. It is not so much, the focus is not so much on Samuel being apart from him, or Samuel being a priest of God. He is Samuel, and Samuel is him. It is the inner soul part of him. So any part of us that as we walk through this is talking about what you do, who you are should be should always represent your higher self. It should always, for lack of a better term, your higher self or that harmony that we are seeking. Uh, so the good that in his battles in his walk was not going to God. He was only seeing Saul. Is what I'm trying to say, and that is what he's saying is equivalent to witchcraft. Now does it make better sense? And I thank you for that, George.
Ron, before Pastor gets on, I do have a question. This is Teresa.
Hey, Teresa.
Hey, my question is, I was a friend of mine reached out to me a couple of weeks ago in reference to them buying a concert ticket to go see another friend who's going through a lot of stuff, and they wanted to go see Beyonce. So this person told her mom and her counselor that they were going to the concert, and the information she got back was that, quote unquote, as they heard, whatever the case may be, that Beyonce practiced witchcraft. Just sharing my input to her was, do you know who you are? Who do you represent? Who do you worship? And how does that play into her buying a ticket to go see someone that she wasn't aware of, but she was going to support a friend, and she know who she is? That's my question.
Yeah. Teresa, and I'll answer this my way, and I please invite the class to help out with this. Many years ago, a friend of mine, someone who's very dear to me, who I consider to be a man who's devoted to understanding the scriptures, and I have grown up with all my life. But he insists that all rap music is demonic, and he tries to. I don't care who the artist is demonic, and he does. So, without being disrespectful to him, one day we sat down and talked about it, and I asked the question, why is it that it seems like everything that Black people do turns out to be something super negative? Do you have proof of that? Can you show me that? And I'm not at all, trying to call him a liar, but I've heard this about Beyonce. If these things are true, I look at the fact that I am sincere about who I am and who this walk that we're on, and I look at that as being my safeguard. But it just seems to me that there's always something negative about somebody that we are supposed to pay attention to, and I don't put a lot of stock in that. That's me. If I'm looking at that wrong, somebody help me out. But I just think that there's a lot of negativity out there. Nobody ever comes up with something beautiful to say about somebody. Like I read that Beyonce and Jay-Z do a lot of charity work, giving stuff to people. That stuff doesn't get publicized as much. So, but we hear about the negative things that really, to me, are just rumors. But I don't know. Somebody else that might have more insight into this, please help me out.
Well, to me, when it comes to that topic of witchcraft, there's a good side of witchcraft, and to me, it's a not so good side of witchcraft. And I rely on the story in the Bible. Moses was talking to his brother, his brother was, who your God is, blah, 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 blah. And Moses' brother summoned his magician and sorceress. And the magician and sorceress laid their staff down, and each staff turned into a serpent. Then Moses laid his staff down, and his staff turned into a serpent. And his staff turned into a serpent. Soon, the serpent of the sorceress and the magician. So, when it comes to witchcraft, to me, there's a good side of it, there's a bad side of it, and it all depends on what the person's motive is in their heart. So, thank you very much.
If I can speak a little bit to that, I was going to get to that a bit later because you're right that same root word was used there as well, and several other places in the Old Testament where it talks about witchcraft or sorcery. But I didn't get into those because this kind of caught my attention, and frankly, when I looked at where Saul had the woman bring Samuel back, that the witch bring Samuel back, or the medium is what it calls her in my scripture. I didn't quite understand all of that yet, so that's why I purposely didn't bring that part up. But this one just kind of got my attention because I could. It tells us to be alert as to who you are and what you're doing, and this is not something that as a coat they can put on and off. This is something that marks all of your actions and who you are as far as the world sees. So your actions should always be to bring about harmony. So that's what got my attention on this one.
May I?
Yes, sir, please.
Witchcraft is knowing the righteousness of the Creator, knowing the direction, the journey, etc., and refusing to follow it. That's witchcraft according to the scriptures that you read.
Okay.
As far as the story, the question that was raised about Beyonce. If you look at the history, you will see that Sam Cooke was possessed by a demon according to the people in the church that he left. The Charismatics said that rock and roll was demonic. Now, the rap music is demonic. So the question becomes, more so than whether someone is demonic or not, what is it to be demonic? What does the word demon mean? Does not demon speak to confusion, adversarial thoughts and actions? So are we saying that the actions of Beyonce, or is someone saying the actions of Beyonce are adversarial to the word of to what the Creator intends for us to be, and the action and the journey we are to travel? If that is the case, then the churches are demonic also, because it is not traveling that journey. It is an adversarial force against what we talk about. So where does this stop? It stops at what George begun. The story that George was telling was an encounter with Moses and the sorcerers of of Pharaoh. And when, as he said, when they laid their staffs down, they turned to snakes or serpents. And when the staff of Moses was laid down, it also turned to a serpent. But it swallowed both of those serpents that the sorcerers had brought to life through their staffs. So did this really happen? No. This is an allegory. This is a story talking about a spiritual truth. Even if there are those who are adversarial to the truth, they do not have the power to overcome you if you know who you are. The only way that they can overcome you is that you believe that they can. You create in your mind an environment or an opportunity for them to overcome you. So in essence, they are not overcoming you or overtaking you. You are overtaking yourself because you have either failed to or you have not been exposed to the reality of who you are. There is no way, that's the word I ain't going to use. There is no way in the world for an adversary to overcome anyone who's on this journey of truth. Also, the people who believe that those adversarial thoughts and actions cannot touch them, they don't touch them. Most of us grew up in church, and most of us grew up in communities where people talked about root workers. These were simply people who were manipulating the power that all of us have, and they had figured out how to use theirs. And the people, especially the older people in the church, would say things like, that doesn't even bother me because I'm protected. God is not going to let them overtake me. I am protected. They were never harmed by that. Those root workers, or whatever you want to call them. The word witch in the scriptures is totally different than the word witch that comes from our lips. The word witch in the scriptures speak to those who know better but refuse to do better. Samuel means one who listens to God or to hear God. El is God, regardless of where you see it attached to a name or an event. And Saul means one who begs or one who desires something. So Saul begged one who had not followed the journey that they knew they should be following to bring Samuel to a place where he could speak with him. If this was an evil action and Samuel was a righteous man and the Creator allowed it to happen, then that simply means that Samuel came back, or Samuel presented himself in the presence of Saul for the sole purpose of chastising him. Could this possibly be that one who is begging to see Samuel, one who has been disobedient to the task that he had, could this possibly be saying that Saul, the one who refused to carry out the task that he was given, called Samuel back? Could that possibly be saying that? Since which means one who does not adhere to what they know the righteous way to be, as did Saul. These stories in the scriptures are there to bring us messages, and they have been distorted by the same people who distorted everything else. The distortion of witch and witchcraft has caused many people to be murdered, especially females, with the justification of the scriptures, which does not justify that in any form whatsoever. People have been extricated from communities because of that. When George brought up the Zulu, what happened with the Zulu when they were fighting the British is they were coming back, they meaning the Zulu were coming back from war and coming into the villages, and they were violent. They were abusing their wives. They were abusing people in the community. They were just violent. In other words, they had PTSD. And what the Zulu priest did, the Zulu priest created a village for the express purpose of those coming back from war to be delivered from the agitation, the anger, the things that they had seen that caused PTSD. Every warrior had to come through that village. And when they did that, the priest, whatever the priest did, because no one really knows it, as far as I know, I've been looking for it for years. Whatever the priest did, when they went back into the villages, they were just as they were before they left, and there were they had no abusive nature anywhere about them. So this is not witchcraft, and this is not witchcraft in the way that we talk about witchcraft. The reason that the Zulu priest is called a witch doctor is because it is attributed to the Western mindset. And a witch is something evil, something that is superstitious, something that is to be shunned, something that is to be destroyed. So we are obligated, knowing who we are and knowing the journey that we're on, we're obligated to right these wrongs. I was talking to one of my daughters today, and I made a statement about when we were in Africa, we stayed in the bush. And she said to me, that is a racist European terminology when speaking of people of color. It's like saying that they were in the bushes therefore they're pagans. That's how I understood what was being said. So we have to change the way we talk about the scriptures as well as how we talk about the people from whom spirituality came. The people who are nurturers and always have been nurturers of spirituality, love, kindness, forgiveness, etc. It behooves us to do a deep dive into these understandings before we conclude that it is something evil or dark. Everyone has the same powers. How they use them is up to them. However, there is no darkness, there is no confusion that can overcome wisdom. There is no darkness that can overcome light. Therefore, if you are uneasy about being in the presence of someone who you think can do something to you through witchcraft, or through what we call witchcraft anyway, then you don't know who you are. And even if you do know, you're not embracing it. Because when you embrace who you are, there is no doubt about the powers, the inherent powers that you have. There is no doubt that the universe is your protector, your provider. So when I listen at what has been discussed, my only conclusion is witchcraft is something that all of us at some point has been guilty of. Because even knowing who we are, there are responses that we have had that were contrary to knowing who we are. And the idea of this journey is to move in a direction of righteousness so that we can refrain from responding in a way that is not conducive to righteousness. And when we do this, when we recognize that we have not responded in a proper manner and correct that, what we are actually doing is reinforcing who we are and learning to avoid those adversarial encounters in the future. Does that make sense? Any questions, comments, or anyone who wants to add to that or detract from it, please do. Thank you.
Okay, Pastor, my question to you, did I respond in the proper manner? I guess that's my question.
Yep. If you don't know who you are, like you said, do you know who you are?
That's what I said to her, because I know who I am, but I responded to her in that way, and from there, she needed to figure that out on her own.
Yes, because you cannot force her, neither can you actually help her if she doesn't ask questions or desire the help. So it's out there, so question me. What do you mean by that? That's how you get answers. So,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. But any questions about what I said? Can you see it? Is it clear?
It's clear, Rep, to me.
Yes.
So, let us pledge to ourselves this day that we will not use the word witch or witchcraft in the way that religion has presented it to us, because it is antithetical to what the scriptures say. I'm done.
Thank you. Anyone else? Does this make sense to you?
Yep.
Yes.
And the latter part of that, he says, it rejected, you being rejected. In other words, if you're on this journey and where we are now, you know, and we do still sometimes, I guess, struggle to hold on to who we are. But even out of fear, or you just flat out refuse to do or take the actions, what he's saying is you're not fit to counsel anyone. You're not fit to be that enlightenment that people go to.
Hey, Ron. This
Yes,
is
sir.
Charles. It take me back to Abraham and his father. Abraham had the torch, not Abraham. His father had the torch that God had given him to do what he was supposed to do. But when he went to Ur, he didn't move no further. So the torch was passed on to his son. And that's when the Lord told him he would have to leave his home.
Yeah.
And he did do what the Lord had said.
Yeah. And again, Charles, each and every one of these personality traits, I guess, instead of calling them characters, are us. Each and every one of them are us, and you're exactly right. We reach points in our lives that we have decisions to make. We have decisions to make. Who am I? Where am? How much of this? But I like these verses. I think because I as Pastor said, it's totally different than what we've been taught that witchcraft is. Totally different.
Hello,
So
everyone.
just thought it was interesting. I'm sorry, somebody else was speaking.
I didn't want to interrupt you, Ron. Were you
Uh-huh.
finished? I thought I didn't want
Yes.
to interrupt you. Oh, hello, everyone. This is Sheldon. I just wanted to add on to what Pastor Richard just said, and Ron for that. I noticed also when looking at witchcraft in the Bible that it always mentioned divination along with that, and that is not by accident, because the other thing that is actually talking about right now, and often as Pastor Richard was saying, in terms of witchcraft being confused sometimes from a Western uh, thought of like what the Zulu did. Well, witchcraft in itself is also, in a sense, taking advantage of someone or causing divination causing divide, causing strife and confusion within an individual through manipulation or, in a sense, talking them into it and having that ability to do so more so like a spell, but not just a spell that they are under, but a spell with ill intention and to deceive that person. Um, what that makes this different as the uh, Zulu shaman, if you will, was doing was from a psychological standpoint, understanding that these men would deal with PTSD because they were coming from war. And so then separating them and allowing and helping them to go with inside and, in a sense, repair that thing or who they had become for war. So in a sense, getting them past that. How PTSD works is when someone is stuck and essentially they're dealing with a problem that doesn't that is hindering them in a sense from who we are, knowing who they are, or being fully aware and in touch with their humanity. Um, the same thing as it relates to helping someone though, and this happens all the time in therapy, is the same exact thing, but for a righteous reason or for a righteous desire, if you will, is what Jesus was doing. He was also trying to get the people to go in and to help them, even from a psychological standpoint, get them to go within as well, but more so for a healing and building, not trying to deceive them, not trying to cause confusion and divide them, but to help them become or see that they are more, if you will. So if he was walking in healing, not walking in trying to take advantage or trick. Um, there's mention with the witchcraft also with uh, idol worship and such. Again, tricking people, causing division, having them to think that they're less than they are, and to look outwards or put their hope or faith in something else. Again, from the Western standpoint, without necessarily understanding this, then would automatically just look at all of this as being evil and demonic. So I just wanted to speak a little bit more on that and talk about the divination part and the intentions behind the actions of the person who was also committing the quote unquote witchcraft onto others. And so it's also, as Pastor Richard said, and as you said, Ms. Teresa, very important in terms of the person understanding and knowing who they are. One last thing that occurred to me as well, that Pastor Richard mentioned quite some time ago, was how, for example, in many cases, the same institution that caused all these things with witchcraft also deals very little, if none at all, with the love of human beings for other human beings, even for the love that one has for their significant other, is always just a love for Jesus and only Jesus. And so then, of course, anything that goes beyond that or goes beyond what the church itself says is righteous automatically falls under the category of witchcraft or demonic. Thank you. I'm finished at the moment. If no one has any questions or comments.
I wanted to add something to that, because when you were speaking, something came to my mind. divination comes from divine, divinity. So that would say to me, the reason divination is attached to witchcraft is because the powers that are being used to pull away from, or to convince others to pull away from the journey, is done by using methods that has their origin in divinity. If I can tell you that the scriptures teaches tithe and offering, that's a divine source from which I speak. But if I turn right around and tell you that I've taught you wrong, divinity, that tithe is not a divine thing, and it's in the scriptures that it is, has its origin in divinity, then that's witchcraft. That's divination. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I had to find my unmute button. Yes, it did make sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what came
Definitely.
to me. Okay.
I was about to say, definitely that trickery involved. Well, go ahead, please.
No, I'm trying. That just came to me, and I wanted to put it out there. That's all.
Well, it's the same energy, and it's just a manipulation of words, and it's trickery. It happens every day. We see it every day. Yeah, it does make sense.
The other big problem with it, though, as well, is many of our roots of spirituality and understanding of the universe and understanding of who and what we are, etc., falls under, I would say, that the Christian idea of witchcraft. The same thing, for example, like voodoo, and it's not that all of those things, they kind of have a bad rap as if someone was just trying to do harm to someone. All of these things were a way of life, a way of living, a way of praying and being one with the nature, a way, when I say pray, I mean meditating and being one, a way in terms of being one and understanding influence and the weather for crops and food, and bringing healing to people in all of these such things. So in a way, all of the negative stereotypes that have just been, I guess, with a broad stroke painted all over this kind of separated us from our past, and also made it a little bit more difficult for us to know and understand, like I said, of who and what we are. It made it where that part was not, I'm not going to say cut off because it was never cut off, but it did make it a way where we then shun those things as well as shun those abilities and experiences as we had them. So even when not haphazardly, but falling and having those experiences, even that was ignored or deemed as being, bad or not Christ-like, etc. I'm finished. Thank you.
Come back to the comment made that divination has its origin in divinity. Everything has its origin in divinity, does it not? everything. And the difference is, as you all have said, is how it's used. For instance, what's more witchcrafty in terms of the negative aspect of it than belittling your fellow man, killing your fellow man for driving while black, or what's worse than that? So everything has it, whatever the label is, it has its original origin in divinity. But what makes the difference is, as you all have said, how we choose to use that energy. Is it for good or is it for selfishness? It's sort of like my perspective of it. Thank you.
Yeah. Something you guys said, because I wrote this down and I forgot to say it, and when Pastor talked about Saul's name and the meaning, the inquiring, the asking, can it be that in knowing who you are, if you question that, if you are constantly allowing your humanity or your mind to rule you rather than your soul? So even though he has, if you look at them as separately, he has access to Samuel, access to God, is his mind that keeps from seeing who he truly is, and that that just kind of, listening to the conversation kind of remind me of what we were talking about yesterday. There's nothing that changes. Those wars are inside of you, and nothing changes in anybody else if you don't change those within yourself. So it's just a lot to these verses, and looking at Saul and the journey that he takes. And if you can look at it and lay yourself and your journey in that place, what that looks like. I hope that made sense.
Yeah. I want to challenge you. You guys, look in the Old Testament, and I think devil is mentioned in the Old Testament maybe 4 or 5 times. Each place where it's mentioned, look at what it's talking about and see how far off base we've been. One of them says that there were those who were sacrificing their young to the devil rather than to God. Not sacrifice. They were sacrificing, not their young, but they were sacrificing to the devil instead of to God. Here it is, Leviticus 17:7. And they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils after they have gone a whoring. This shall be a statute forever unto them throughout their generations. And when you look at it in that instance, what you find is something that says something that's hairy or shaggy. And it talks about a goat, or a kid, which is a young goat. And if you look at the root of it, it talks about the storm, sweep away. And in other places, it talks about to devastate. But none of the word that's translated as devil in the Old Testament speaks to anything near what we talk about the devil being. And I think that's extremely interesting. However, I really am not prepared to get into a discussion of it at this moment. I think it's something that you may be very interested in looking at yourself, and in doing so, compare what you see to what you've been taught. Thank you.
I think Raul has a lot of the understanding of these things being hidden because of the power of them, the energy, and to keep man from manipulating energy because he doesn't know what's in the book. So the opportunities that we are being given goes along with what we've talked about this weekend, and understanding what these energies are, understanding the relationship between the body and the soul, and how this exists, and how we meditate, how we communicate, how we're all one, who can be responsible for man, who can be responsible to bring about enlightenment into the earth with all of this understanding. So that's kind of how I look at it. I don't think that all of this stuff has been hidden until now, because man has been irresponsible, and he would have found a way to make gains from it rather than bring about enlightenment for all of mankind. So here we are, and what do we do?
Well, one of the things I like to add in conclusion, and where we get Valentine's Day from, and when you look at battle with the Romans, they denied their soldiers access to their wives, and the wives kind of got upset, so they would sneak in, be with their husband. In certain tribes of melanated people, before you went into war, you already had to be committed to a female. Do your research on it. But this is where we get Valentine's Day from. We get it from Rome, of soldiers going into war that did not have access to their family. Yet in some melanated cultures, before you went into war, you had to have a female companion before you went into war. Thank you. Are you familiar with that, Reverend Richard, or not familiar with that?
I'm not.
I'll give y'all something to read then.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions or comments? Just in conclusion, I guess, this just, I'm trying to think of one thing that we've been taught, or we're growing up knowing or thinking we knew, that has panned out when we actually unravel it and look at the scriptures. There's nothing in this book that looks the way we thought it looked, or we've been taught that it says. And there's absolutely nothing in here that's something for us to fear. So, but thank you. Thank you for the discussion. I hope everyone has some understanding, and seems like a good place to stop for the evening. Any one last time, any questions or comments, anybody? Okay then. Well, hope you have a great week, and look forward to Saturday, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. You have
Thank
a great
you.
evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.